Is it time to talk politics now?
Possibly.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Meg. And this is Ger Can Get It. This week, the homework episode.
If they gave awards for makeouts on screen or stage, this guy would get a lifetime achievement. He'll find any excuse to get right to sucking face. You honestly wouldn't believe it. Dissecting each and every kiss with tongue. There's only one conclusion to come to. It's that Ger can get it. Ger can get it.
Oh, God, it was.
I have never done as much homework as I did for this hour or however long this ends up being of podcasting. And I was in law school. So please, take that, understand what I'm saying to you. I have never tried so hard. And for any Canadian listening, I'm probably going to screw half of this up. I'm doing the best I can. Feel free to comment on the Instagram or the YouTube or send us an email at gercangetit@gmail.com and tell me how wrong I am, and I'll do a correction episode. But I'm not kidding. I read a history book. I watched other documentaries. I shanghaied my dad into watching clips of this movie so that he could then tell me the things that I was watching and what was happening because I still didn't understand it. I took notes. I did my work. I tried so hard.
You did. You put in the work.
And I'm still not 100% sure that I understand it, but we're gonna do the best we can. So this week, we're watching the Trudeau miniseries from 2002. But when you Google it, if you want to buy this and watch it, it'll say it's a movie. It is not a movie. Mm-mm. It is 3.5 hours long. It's not a movie. It's a miniseries. It was in 2 parts.
Miniseries. Was it in 2 parts?
It's 2 parts, yeah.
Okay.
But if you buy the DVD, I don't remember looking at any of the options. I just hit play and then, held my eyes open like Clockwork Orange. But I don't know if there's an option to just watch part 1 or just watch part 2 if you want to, because when you hit play, it will play from the beginning to the end. So this took me 4 days to get through 3.5 hours of solid political discourse at such a granular level. Like The West Wing has nothing on this. This was so this was somehow the most and the least detailed movie I have ever goddamn miniseries that I've ever seen in my entire life. And like I say, I'm not 100% sure I got everything. I tried real hard. We're gonna do what we can. And as has been the theme the last couple of weeks, Ger shows up for 35 seconds.
Yeah.
At hour 3.
He came in for some ham, man. He came in, he got a sandwich, he hung out with Colm for a little bit.
Yeah, no, they're bros. They're bros.
Yeah.
They were like, do you have a premiere character that sort of looks like me? And I don't know, he could have a dramatic speech and ogle a lady at some point. And they were like, you know what?
Can I bring my own pipe? And they were like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine here.
Well, he brings his own glasses to everything else.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah. So Ger in this plays a character called, a real man, a real human person called Bill Davis, who was the Premier of Ontario. And I should have written down the dates, but at least in 1982, this man was still the Premier of Ontario. And I asked my parents, do you remember him? And they were like, oh yeah, we remember him. And I was like, can you tell me anything you remember about him? And they were like, no. So I don't I don't have much, except that I think my mom hates every politician in Canada that she knew that lived while she was there. So she doesn't seem to like any of them, but asking for specific details as to why. No, just a general sense of disgust with everyone. So,
It feels like a proud politic tradition. Just never
just a general sense of disdain. Yeah.
I think I have one president in my lifetime, so it's totally fine.
I mean, yeah, if I try to think about it from my end too, I'm
Obama and then or bust.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I like what's her face? I like Elizabeth Warren. I would have liked her to be president or my best friend or just anything in between. I like her a lot. Okay, so we watched the Trudeau miniseries. It's about not Justin. It's about his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was prime minister from 1968 through, I believe, 1979. Then there's a little gap in between when it's Joe Clark. I'm 99% sure it's Joe Clark who's prime minister. And then nobody likes Joe Clark. He's prime minister for 85 seconds. They're like, you know who we did like? The Trudeau guy. So then Trudeau comes back into office.
Bring that shit back.
Yeah. The movie, goddamn, the miniseries, not a movie, 3.5 hours of my life. I know, but I'm like mad about it because I felt tricked. I was like, it's a movie. And I sat down and then I saw the little ticker on the bottom was like 3.5 hours. And I was like, that's not right. And then it didn't move. I watched like 45 minutes and it still said 3.5 hours left. I was like, why? So, as you said, Colm Feore plays Trudeau from the late 60s through like 1982-ish. That's about when they end the movie. He does the Trudeau accent, I thought, really well.
He does a great job.
Yeah. If you listen to, it's hard to, I feel like I don't know how to describe the Pierre Elliott Trudeau accent. I hadn't ever heard him speak before watching the clips that I watched for research for this episode. I don't know how to describe his accent because he's from Quebec. It's not a Quebecois accent. I've never heard anyone else have this accent. It's almost a transatlantic accent, if you know, like from like the 40s and 50s, those movies. But not quite. It's this weird lilting, like it sounds, he was from a very wealthy, like fancy educated family, and it sounds like I'm from a very fancy, wealthy, educated family. He kind of
like
lingers.
Diction courses.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anyone hasn't heard Trudeau talk, I would say like Google that because it's an indescribable fancy accent, but Colm Feore does it exactly. Like I like that you texted me and you're like, what? Why is he making that voice? And I was like, that's the voice. That's the correct voice. It's like if you'd never heard Ray Romano and then someone did an impression of Ray Romano, you'd be like, are you okay?
Yeah.
No human has had that voice.
It's kind of like JFK. Like JFK had a very distinct accent.
Yeah.
It's totally not like any other accent. And it's the same where it's drawn out in certain places where you wouldn't expect a movie to, or wouldn't expect it to be drawn out. That's how it felt.
Or sort of like Obama. I feel like there's a lot of Obama parallels. Like from watching this, but like how Obama has his own sort of unique accent. Like you have like there's like an erudite vibe about it. It sounds like I'm an educated, fancy, classy person. Yeah. But if I had to pick where you grew up or where you're from, I would be like, I have no idea.
I took diction courses to get rid of whatever I felt was a regional accent because
whatever regionalism.
I want to appeal to more people. So I need to sound neutral, but now I just sound affected.
Yeah, that's exactly correct, I think. Yeah. So if anyone hasn't heard him, I would say watch a little clip because otherwise you're going to start watching this movie and be like, did Colm Feore have a stroke? He did not. He's doing an excellent job. I like Colm Feore. I like him in anything he's in. I'm always really impressed by him. He does a great job in this. Like he has to play.
He puts a lot of work into this.
He put a lot of work. He has to play an inscrutable character. I feel like that's maybe one of my several complaints about this movie, and maybe it's not really about this movie so much as about like Trudeau the man. He is kind of like all things. He is kind of everywhere and nowhere. Like sometimes he's too passionate. Sometimes he is very cold. Sometimes he seems very liberal and cares about liberal things. Sometimes he's ordering the fucking army to come to town. Like it's just, it's a hard character to play. And I thought Colm Feore does an excellent job. Like I'm really impressed by it. There is a sequel movie to this called Trudeau 2, because of course that's what it's called. It is in fact a prequel, and someone else plays Trudeau. And I think they said that it wasn't just because it was like young man Trudeau that they got a different actor. I think they said it was Colm Feore was like off to his next project or whatever, and he wasn't. I think it might have been Umbrella Academy. I don't know. He was off on his next thing already, and they weren't. So he couldn't do it. Okay. So the movie starts off. The first section is miniseries. It's Trudeau mania. And like, I feel like they don't spend a lot of time on this section. And I love Colm Feore. He is great. He is not an ugly man. He's fine. But he's definitely older when he's playing a younger Trudeau in this first section. And Trudeau, the older he gets, like his hairline is, there's like the giant sideburns, but the top of his hair is like going backwards. So it's both receding and coming forward at the same time. So it's like, and Colm Feore, like, he's not as thick on top as you could be. So like young Trudeau, as played by Colm Feore, it's a little confusing to the viewer why he's like a giant sex object. Like when I was first watching this, I was like, what is happening here? Like what? Like, I mean, there have been unusual sex objects, men who are like unusual in that they're not like typically handsome, but that they're like seen to have like a, sexual energy. And sometimes people make podcasts about them. I don't know. But like, it's weird, right?
I don't know.
But like, my understanding is that like young Trudeau was probably like more like our current young Trudeau, like Justin Trudeau,
Yeah.
actually very handsome, and he's very young, and he was very smart, and he had all these grand ideas, and so it is sort of like Obama mania, and they called it Trudeau mania. So if you kind of mentally think about when Obama first comes on the national stage in the States, and everyone's like throwing their panties at him because they're everyone was sort of hot for Obama, but also like, what great ideas, and you're going to change everything, and you're going to make everything better, and like you're this new wave of like you're different, and you're going to fix all of our lives. So that's kind of the same vibe as my understanding that we have with Trudeau in 1968. And they filmed this like a Beatles movie.
Yep.
But only this section. So if you're watching and you're thinking like, is this whole thing going to be a music video? No, it is not. But the first like 35 minutes will be.
It felt very 60s. I
It did
didn't
feel very
mind all
60s.
I know you were thrown, but I didn't, maybe because I was pre-warned, but I didn't mind all the way each section is filmed felt very decade specific.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Well, yeah.
And so it felt like the tone changed as his tone changed.
Yeah. I don't hate it as like I don't know, it's not a framing device, but like I don't hate it as like a stylistic choice. But it was, I feel like there were so many choices that like I feel like I don't understand. And so like putting all those little choices I don't understand, like mashing them together. There are ones that I liked and ones that I felt frustrated by. But like the overall effect, I felt kind of like a tsunami hit me. And now I'm just on the beach with my face down in the sand going like, I have no idea what happened. But that was 3.5 hours of
That's
that.
fair. Yeah.
But it's kind, I mean, like it's fun. Like it's very fun and cute. It's just sort of like confusing to watch. And then there's scenes with Trudeau at like a Christmas party, and there are these like 1960s women smoking and holding martinis and like wetting their pants a little bit over him. And it is so intense because he's like having a political conversation in the corner, and these women are like, oh, the things I would do to that man. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The lady with all the sexual innuendos.
Yeah. Who just kept throwing them at him. Like, are you going to catch one? How about this one? Will you catch this one? It was, I mean, like it's probably decade accurate to a drunken politics party in the 60s, but watching it, I was like, oh, okay. All right. So no HR person, no. Okay. All right, cool.
Mm-mm.
Just
no, not in the 60s.
No,
No.
just we're all gonna, here's my underwear, boss. Yeah. It was a scene.
It was a sign of admiration. I would fuck you. Oh, that's so sweet. You're so kind.
And he drives around in his little convertible. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. So when it starts off, he is some minister in the government. Everyone is like, look, Lester Pearson is going to be stepping down. He's going to be retiring. He doesn't want to do this shit anymore. We want you to be the new head of the Liberal Party. And he's like, what? No. What? Okay, sure. So then he runs.
All right.
It was like the best false modesty I've ever seen. It was like, what? I mean, really? Okay. Because it was like, you're going to appeal to people from Quebec because you're from Quebec. You're going to appeal to everyone else because you don't sound like you're from Quebec. Like, it's the perfect mix. Like, you're our Jesus, we're running with you. So they run with him. He becomes prime minister. He wins 1968. And then, like, that whole section, it's pretty short. It's just everyone loves him and he wins and whatever. Like,
this movie was wildly unconcerned with anything that happened before he met his wife.
I'm going to talk about that's one of the sections. That section was rough.
He existed and then he met his wife. Let's talk about her, shall we?
You know what? Let's
3 hours and 25 minutes.
Yeah, let's. I was going to talk about the October crisis first, but let's just get through the Margaret Pierre stuff because I have so many feelings about that. So all that I knew about Margaret Trudeau before watching this movie was what I heard from my mom. And what I got from my mom was what was in every tabloid because that's the family that we are. We are white trash. So I knew that she had affairs with Jack Nicholson, that she used to hang out with the Rolling Stones. I knew that she was bipolar, like came out as bipolar and kind of had like mental health campaigns and stuff like that. I don't know if I knew that she had written some memoirs, but like I knew that she had talked to like every tabloid magazine that would go anywhere near her. I knew that she had talked to all of them. And like, that's probably like about it. So I was like, okay, this movie, they're focusing so much on her. They're going to like add to my understanding of this woman. And they sort of did, but they paint it's sort of like the Trudeau character, like the Pierre character, where it's such an uneven mix of characteristics that I'm like, is this the movie, or was this woman really just so complicated and all over the place? Like, okay, so she's 18. She's on vacation with her family in Tahiti, as you do. Who's
No.
there? A 47-year-old Pierre Trudeau. And we're going to just pause for a second so that you can understand that you did hear those words. 47 and 18. Anyone who doesn't want to hear me barf, like, just put the mute button on right now, because gross. Fucking gross. So he is hitting on her while she's doing some poli-sci homework for university. I'm hoping it's university and not high school. It might be high school, at like sitting next to the pool in Tahiti. So they're having this like really high level poli-sci conversation. It's one of those like, we just like ping smart things off of each other just to like impress each other.
I'm a bigger fan of Locke than whatever. And I was like, oh, that's who she is.
Yeah. It's a little obnoxious, but I was like, okay,
yeah.
At least in this first scene, like, yes, she's obnoxious. Yes, she's like that I'm 18, so I'm real smart, and I'm just going to show you how smart I am, girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get it. But I'm like, okay, your first presentation of her to me is she is not stupid. She is a very smart, well-educated girl. Like, okay, great. But then every scene in the movie after that feels like both the characters and the movie are like, oh, you're like 22 and you're like, you got big tits and big hair and no brain, and isn't that cute? And like pats her on the head. And I'm like, I get that like being the like precocious 18-year-old is different from being like smart in a helpful way in real life. Like, I get that those are not the same, but it just felt very jarring to me that like it wasn't just Pierre ignoring her, because that's a big part of their story, but it sort of felt like the movie was ignoring her too. Like, so they meet her family meets him, and they're like super impressed that he's the prime minister. And I'm like, yeah, but also he's 47 and your kid is not 47, and you may not be 47, and I guess it's the 60s and we're fine with this.
Yeah,
I guess we're fine with this.
I mean, you're going to marry the prime minister, so okay.
Yeah, I guess. Sure. So they immediately show her like she's trying to help him with his campaign, and she has like all these ideas, and he literally just pats her on the head and walks away. Like, he takes her to some party in some like francophone household, and everyone's talking in French, and she knows like 3 words of French, and he doesn't even know that she doesn't speak French. And I'm like, aren't you married at this point? He just plops her in a corner and is like, I'm going to go talk to all these people over here in French.
No, they're not married yet.
Is that before the marriage? Okay.
Yeah.
So, but he just leaves her. He just leaves her in a fucking corner. And first off, it's he's 47. His friends are all 47. She's 18 and a half in the corner, like sipping her little drink and like smiling awkwardly. Like, he just seems like he was, when she was the shiny thing next to the pool, he was interested. And then immediately he's like, pass. I'm done with that. Like, I guess I'll just keep hitting that and I'll marry it and put some kids into that. But like,
yeah,
it felt very,
I am Trudeau. I'm the center of the universe. And if you want to be with me, you're with me.
Yeah.
And you have to be Trudeau's wife. This isn't about you anymore. Because
correct.
Yeah, there's that whole scene where she's serving tea to all those ladies. And she's like, do you guys ever get tired of doing this? And they're like, it doesn't matter if we're tired of doing it or not.
Yeah, this is what our role is.
This is literally what you signed up to do. And she's like, I know, but it's now my whole life. And they're like, yeah, correct.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Aren't you lucky?
It's like, it's heartbreaking, but it feels like the movie is both showing us like how hard her life became when she got attached to him, and also at the same time being like, she's an idiot, and she was stoned all the time, and she was, wild and free and embarrassing, and what a shame it was for Trudeau, like this serious, important guy, to be shackled to like the stoned hippie. Like, it's somehow like sympathetic to her and also really degrading to her at the same time.
Yeah, it tried to walk a line, and I'm not sure it always succeeded in.
Yeah. It was the one thing I will say about this movie, for like every single character and every single thing that I see on screen, it made me want to do that homework. It made me want to learn more. It made me want to find Margaret Trudeau's books, because I'm sure I could find them at a used bookstore somewhere. Like she's still alive. She's still around.
I think part of this might be the fact that this actress was an interesting choice
I thought she
in
did a good
terms of
job.
acting. I don't know.
I mean,
She
that's
does
fair.
fine. She's fine, but I do think there's moments where they wanted her to have more nuance, and she was just like, like,
I mean, that's probably
'cause
fair.
she's from Forever Night. We have been remiss in mentioning that, but she is
Oh, I
in an
forgot.
episode of Forever Night. She's in Trophy Girl, and she's in the flashback, and she's the girl that, like, I don't even think she gets a name, but LaCroix's like,
Lizette.
I've been force feeding her wine for the last 3 weeks, so she's gonna taste real good. And Nicholas shows up to tell her to turn away LaCroix. Don't let him kill you. And he's like, actually, you smell really good. And he ends up eating her.
I
Yeah.
will say that in terms of believability, she was perhaps a little more believable as Lizette, the French
Yes.
vampire victim, than she is as Margaret Trudeau. But do I enjoy that Premier Bill Davis got to eat Margaret Trudeau? Like, a little bit. I kind of like that a little bit. Also, she played two characters that were briefly associated with very powerful older men. So I
Yes.
think that's
Yeah.
a good career choice.
That particular flashback is notable because I think we talked about it. Nigel Bennett wanted to lick the blood off of Ger's face. And they were like, maybe a step too far, Nige. I don't know. And he was like, fucking fine. So he does like a thumb swipe. And then licks
I like
it.
how it's already like the most homoerotic thing I've ever seen outside of actual gay male penetration on another man. And somehow they were like, no, the actual licking, that's a step too far, sir.
Too far.
Yeah. That's not the level of homoerotic content we want here on Forever Night. We want just up to the line. We want just a scooch.
Should have let him do it.
It would have been amazing.
Classic blunder. Should just let Nige lick his face, man.
I mean, I don't know. Like, now that I think about it, I don't know if the stuff, like whenever they have like blood dripping on their faces, like I imagine that's probably not just Ribena. It's probably got like a little bit of syrup or something.
Corn syrup, yeah.
Yeah, to keep it from moving. But like the amount of Ribena that they had to imbibe, and Ribena plus corn syrup just makes me want to throw up forever. Like the idea, the concept of it. So like the amount of fucking awful sugar high crack that they had to drink every episode, let him kiss it off Ger's face. Do you know what I mean? Like let him do what he wants. You're making him suffer. They can't see through those contact lenses. They can't talk through those teeth. They have to drink like red sugar water for like 8 hours in the middle of the night in parts of Toronto where they're definitely going to get mugged. Let them make out a little. Give him some joy.
Give the man his reward. No, I think that part of the problem with the way that Margaret ends up looking in this miniseries is the actress. I just don't think she can sell us a range.
And that may be
it.
The
note she strikes, but I think they wanted her to feel sad and sympathetic, and she ends up coming off as like petulant.
Yeah.
And entitled.
I feel like it's not just her, because we only have that one scene where they're like, she is really smart and capable. But like, I'm like, okay, I'm starting off with, that's my picture of Margaret in my head. Like, she's smart. She's a little obnoxious, but she's 18. So everyone's obnoxious at 18. But I'm like, she's smart. And then they have the scene where she's talking with Trudeau. They're like at a big gathering of like, his political aides or whatever. And she's like, oh, hey, did you see that one magazine article? Like, they wanted to talk to me. And I told them all the things I do for your campaign. And they were really very flattering about you. And it was a really great, like puff piece, like about how great you are. Like I did my share. Like, we're like sneaking in good news about you into these women's magazines. Like I'm getting that part of the audience. I'm getting that part of Canadian voters to know you and to love you like I do. Like it sounds like it wasn't like just like a tabloid. It sounds like it was a real magazine. She put in the effort to try to help his campaign.
Yeah.
And his response is literally like to pat her on the shoulder and was like, oh yeah, no, that's good. And then turn around, start talking to the rest of his campaign team, and then they just walk away from her. Like they're talking about their plans. Like, here's our next tour stop, and we're going to talk about this and not that. And it's literally like if a kid came up to you and was like, I bounced the ball 6 times. And you're like, no, that's great. And then you turn around and you're back to having the adult conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like they have scenes like that where it seems to show that she's not stupid and she's trying to be helpful in ways that she can be helpful. They show her on some of the campaign tours. There's one scene where they're all up on a stage and she gets up and she's talking about, the husband that I love. And yeah, there's a couple of gaffes, but she's putting in the effort. She's trying so hard. But it feels like the miniseries goes from she's smart, but like this is not really her world. And she's so young that like she's not cut out to be a prime minister's wife. She's not cut out to stand there and smile and nod her head and say nothing and like, go to the community center and like knit a quilt with them. Like that's not what she was cut out to do in her life. It's hard for her, but it's not because she's not smart and capable. It's not because she doesn't care. It's just that was never going to be her forte. And it seems like it starts there and it segues really quickly into actually, we're kidding. She's a stoner and an idiot.
Yeah.
And then they still want you to feel sad for her because there's all these scenes where she's in the family home and she's like, Pierre, will you even like, can you have dinner with me and the children? Like, can we have 5 minutes of being a family? Like, can you sit with me? Can you sit with them? Can you play with them? Can you talk to me? And he's like, nah, bitch, I'm busy. And he just like gets up and leaves.
Yeah. I think if they'd had any chemistry at all,
I mean,
you would feel those moments a lot more deeply. Cause there's definitely that one where somebody's family has been taken hostage.
Yeah.
And he's like, we can't negotiate. Like, we can't, because if we get them out, then what we're saying is if you want a politician to do what you want them to do, you just have to get their family. And so she's like, but you would save us. If they took us, you would save us. And he's like, no, I wouldn't.
Nope. No. Yeah. Well, and but that's part of, I don't think it's, there's a part of it that probably is that like, do I believe that Colm Feore and this child like got it on? No, because I don't think Colm Feore is a pedophile. He doesn't have that vibe for me.
No.
So yeah,
Colm couldn't dredge it up. He was just like, oh, okay.
But I will say, like, he plays him like when they're in that Tahiti scene, he plays him very charming, a very I mean, a little bit like a guy that's like too smart to be charming in a way where I don't want to punch him in the face a little bit, but like for that person, like that's him with his full charm offensive.
Oh, he's crushing it. Yeah, because he's charming that time. He's charming when he meets her at her family's house.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's not until after the party where they're all speaking French and she breaks down in the car and she's like, I can't believe you did that to me. I don't speak French. I didn't know what was happening. I felt alone. I felt upset. And she starts crying and he gets this look like, oh my God, she's an actual child. Like,
yeah.
Ooh,
and then it like shuts down.
Like like, oh my God, I'm physically attracted to this person, but I just totally forgot that they're an actual child. And he has to hug her to like calm her down. And it's a very like dad moment.
Yeah.
And I think he sells that completely where he's like,
oh yeah.
And
yeah,
that's when
you
he's
watch
like,
his face just change.
Yeah. And that's when he's like, maybe we should just kind of take a break for a while.
Yeah. And she can only stay away for 6 months and then she comes back and like leaps on him.
Yeah. And she ends up coming back to him and he's like, we're on break. And she's like, I don't want to do that anymore.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like these characters are both so full of contradictions. And I don't know enough to be like, oh, the movie was just not successful at like really showing us who Trudeau is or who Margaret is. Or whether it's, no, these characters are actually, these human beings are so full of contradictions, like that's just them. Because Trudeau has 2 modes, and it's either, like you said, super charm offensive, like just like laying it on thick, like very charming. Like I the first time I watched it, they don't ever announce that she's 18 in that scene. Like it's just a girl studying her school book, but like she's got an adult body and she's there by the beach and Trudeau is like, sup. He is very charming. It doesn't read as creepy in that scene at all. He's very much going for it. And you see, I feel like that scene sold Trudeau mania to me much better than any of that Beatles segment. because the Beatles segment was like, everyone loves him. And I was like, why? And then he's at the beach and he's like, hey girl. And I was like, oh, am I into Comfior now? Like what? I don't know how to handle this. And Comfior like doing that insane Trudeau accent. I was like, that's not a kink I needed. That's not something that needed to like live in my soul. That's never going to be fulfilled ever. That's wrong. But like, he's very, very charming and warm. And like he really sells it. He really sells him as like a smart, hot, erudite, bangable politician. You're like, oh, okay. And then most of the rest of the movie, he is so cold and so not mean, but like so calculating, both when he's dealing with other politicians and then when he's dealing with Margaret. And it's like, I know that his motto, I don't know if that's the right word, but he had like a slogan for one of his campaigns, and it was reason over passion. And I'm like, yeah, but also with your family, maybe less of that, because it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But there was a scene where Margaret is mad at him, and there's a quilt hanging on the wall with little letters kind of like Velcroed to the quilt that say reason over passion. And she starts ripping the letters off. She's so mad. That apparently that really happened. I don't know if it was actually like little Velcroed letters. The way that it was described in my 18 hours of like solid Googling into the life of Margaret Trudeau, it sounded more like some like famous artist had, like a textile artist had put this quilt together, and Margaret ripped the shit out of it with her bare hands, like ripped this fucking thing off the wall. So it sounds like, I mean, for the miniseries, they probably just put Velcroed letters to make it easier, but it sounds like real Margaret went like beast mode. And like with scissors in her bare hands, just ripped the shit out of this fucking quilt. Like, here's what I think about your reason over passion. And like, I guess that's another scene too, where like maybe she could have sold it better. Maybe the props could have sold it better. Like maybe, because like her pulling off the Velcro does feel very much like a 6-year-old having a tantrum.
Yeah.
But what's actually happening is this woman whose whole life has been devoted to a guy that could not give a shit, and treats her and views her like an actual infant and like a burden, and like you sit in the corner and you don't talk, and because when you open your mouth you embarrass me, and I need you not to embarrass me because I am the prime minister and this is my job, and your job is to stand there and just not shit your pants on stage, and that's all I need from you. And that's heartbreaking. That is so heartbreaking. And then she turns around and in her own house, there's a big fucking quilt that says reason over passion. Like, that's the last straw. That's what breaks her brain open. Like, this should be heartbreaking. And instead it's like, Velcro. It's just like, it's a frustrating movie. But like I said, it made me like so frustrated by not understanding the things it was showing me, that it made me go out and do my homework. And I'm happy that it made me do that, because my knowledge of Canadian history, when I left Canada, I was 12. All I knew was like the 1700s and the fur traders. That's where my education ended. So like Trudeau, I knew the name, obviously. Like I knew that he existed. I knew he was a divisive figure. Like everyone has strong opinions on him. And then I knew that Margaret like slept with Jack Nicholson. Like that's what I knew.
Yeah.
And so
American
then
history doesn't teach Canadian history. I don't know if you could have guessed.
Yeah.
But they're like, Canada exists. You're welcome. One time they burned down the White House, those fuckers. And then that's pretty much like,
I'm not gonna lie. Like I don't remember if it like what history class it was in, but like the War of 1812 and we got the White House once, we're gonna do it again. Like that came up a couple of times in our history classes. Like everyone is like really proud of that, and I'm like, okay,
that? Okay, all right.
Like it's weird that they spent so much time on that and zero time on Trudeau in 1982, and we became a real fucking country. Like 82, that's so recent.
I know.
That's so fucking recent. Okay, we'll get there in a second. But I was just, this movie like was not like in terms of coming to Trudeau with zero knowledge. If you are not from Canada or you haven't studied Canadian history, if you watch this movie, you're going to get very upset. It was very frustrating coming in with zero knowledge, because it was a little bit like watching The West Wing, where people just start throwing politics at each other, but at such a nitty-gritty granular level that it's hard to even understand, like, what are you arguing about?
There's a lot of assumed knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. like you're mad about X, but I don't know what the state of X was before this argument. I don't know do you want X to happen? Do you want less X? Do you want more X? Does that guy want more X? Like just even the like who wants what and why and what's the situation, this movie does not care to show you. But then it gives like an hour and a half to like Margaret Trudeau is mad, but even that's not super effective because like we said, it's more like they're showing you things to try to tell you that Margaret is smart and we should feel bad for her because her life is bad. But then they frame it as actually JK, she's an idiot. And it's frustrating.
But don't worry, Trudeau's a good dad.
Well, that was that was hard too. So, okay. So, well, and okay. So here's the one thing that I found extra frustrating because the one thing I did know was, like I said, that she was bipolar. She had bipolar disorder. I don't know at what point in her life she knows she has bipolar disorder, but like the movie was made in 2002. Like they knew. She wrote books about it. She like talked about it. They knew. So they show her sometimes getting very upset very quickly. Like at one point, Trudeau is going to be riding in one limousine and she's going to be riding in another limousine. And I think they're going to see the Japanese prime minister. And she's like, no, I'm riding with my husband. And Trudeau's like, no, you're not, getting the other fucking car. And she's like, she has like a full on tantrum, which if you don't know that she's bipolar and you're presenting her otherwise as like very childlike, this is like not sympathetic at all. And it should be sympathetic. Like you should feel it's very weird to me, this movie. It's somehow like they're like saying the words of things that would make her sympathetic. But then the way that they actually draw the picture is like she's got horns and like snakes for hair. And I'm like, no, like you seem to get conceptually that she should be a very sympathetic character. And then you're presenting her like his baby wife and it was just a bad choice all around. And it's just, it's frustrating. This portrayal of her, I felt like I don't know where the movie wants to sit. And the more I think about it, the more I think maybe you've hit the nail on the head. Maybe it's just that the actress who's playing Margaret isn't able to get that nuance. And so when she should be showing someone with bipolar disorder, like just being overcome by all of the frustration of her life and not being able to handle it, and then bipolar sort of taking control and her just having a meltdown and not being able to control it in front of a husband who doesn't care and who finds her to be a problem to be dealt with instead of someone who's suffering with mental illness and needs compassion and needs some help. Like she's not able to portray that subtly enough and it just comes off like
petulant, like a tantrum.
So I don't know, but the movie, like it made me have more sympathy for Margaret out of spite for this movie. Just like
I did end up feeling like I want this movie to just be about Margaret. Like I want to know.
Yeah, like I want like I feel like you're showing me a piece of Swiss cheese. What's in those holes? What are you not showing me? Because they never say the word bipolar one time in this entire movie.
No,
not once.
They're like, why couldn't she just shut up and be a good wife?
Yeah,
that's what he needed her to be. Didn't she know what he needed her to be?
Yeah, didn't she know what she signed up for in the job application when she was 18, lounging by the Tahitian pool?
Yeah.
So it shows her trying to help him. And then it seems to delight in finding all the instances where she puts her foot in her mouth and she says the wrong thing, or she says something that's like
and sings.
Oh, that was a little uncomfortable. Yeah. She's at a dinner. They're in South America, right? Because Trudeau stands up and speaks French or Spanish.
Spanish. Yeah.
And she gets up and she's like, I know I'm not supposed to talk now. I know it's supposed to be the president of, and I don't even recall the name of the country at this point, but she's like, I know it's supposed to be the president who talks after the prime minister. I really had a good time and I really liked the wife of the president. So what I did is I wrote a little song in English, which again, they don't appear to speak English. They only speak Spanish. But she's like, I just wrote a little fun song. And if I know we're at a state dinner, and this is very formal and like regimented and shit, but if you'll give me a chance, my song has 12 verses and I wrote them all myself. I brought my own guitar. Here I go. And she starts singing. And the actress is not a bad singer, but it's literally like if you had your 10-year-old child stand up at a Christmas dinner and go, I wrote you a song. And then just start singing about like shit that she saw in front of her. Like, there are 3 forks. There are 2 knives. Like, it's so deeply uncomfortable. And it broke my fucking heart. It broke my heart. Cause like, why you've already showed me the one scene where she stands up and she talks about Trudeau and she says she's trying to humanize him a little bit. And whatever she says is everyone like laughs and they take it as a gaffe, even though it's just, I didn't find it, whatever it was like such a small thing, but everyone in the audience is like, oh, I don't know. She said like, you don't know the man I love. And she said love on stage or whatever. Bullshit. It was like a nothing. It was like a nothing comment. But it's like, you've already showed me that. Like you've showed me that the audience thinks she puts her foot in her mouth and that Trudeau thinks she puts her foot in her mouth. Why are you digging the knife in and showing me her singing her little song if you're not just trying to shit on the Margaret character? Like, why are you doing this to me? So we have the scenes like that. He just keeps ignoring her and putting her down and like not showing up at home for weeks. And she has, she's living in, I think it's 22 Sussex is the prime minister's residence. So she's at the residence. She has maids and staff and help, and they're helping her raise her children. But like, it's not your husband. Like she's alone. She's not talking to the help and the maids, and they're not her friends. Like they're just, they're taking the kids to trips and adventures and shit. And she's by herself. So they show her drinking a lot. She had been smoking pot a little bit when she was younger because she was younger and it was the 60s. Like, who's surprised by that?
Yeah.
And then it kind of shows her starting to get back into marijuana more. And it seems like maybe she's got like some dependency issues, but like maybe she's just fucking depressed and alone and she doesn't know she's bipolar and they're not giving her any medicine or talking to her.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know. Like this movie, I don't know. I don't know if they're just trying to show me how shittily Trudeau treated her. Cause like, that's clear in like 1 hour. So at 3.5 hours, I'm like, I get it. I do get it. Like it's sinking in.
Yeah.
And now it feels like you're just shitting on her. Like you're not showing me them shitting on her. You yourself are shitting on her. So I don't know. But, so she starts kind of trying to live her own life just to have something for herself. She starts, taking photography lessons and she starts taking photographs and trying to be like a what do you call it? Like a photojournalist basically, and following around rock bands and stuff. There is some question whether she did anything improper with any members of the Rolling Stones, because it sounds like there's like 3 different versions of this if you look online, because like there's the tabloid version, there's the Rolling Stone version, there's her version, and none of them lines up. But her being around the Rolling Stones in their hotel room until like 3 a.m. It's the early 70s. It doesn't look good. Like whether she does drugs with them, whether she has sex with any of them, whether I saw some article comment where it was one of the members of the Rolling Stones who was like, she embarrassed herself. We didn't even want her there. We were creeped out that she was even around us and like wouldn't go home. Like, it's just like everyone who could be shitty to her was shitty to her. It's really frustrating. But whatever happened, like the newspapers pick up Margaret Trudeau, married to the prime minister, is in a hotel room with the Rolling Stones until 3 a.m. So like everyone's putting 2 and 2 together, and whether they're getting 4 or 64, like it doesn't look good. And she comes in, this is one of those heartbreaking scenes. She comes into his office and she's like, hey, I know this was in the paper. Like, can I explain to you what happened? Like, I told you I've been trying to become a photojournalist. And so I was following the Stones. I was taking photos of them. I was going to, put them in magazine articles and stuff. And he literally like turns around and looks at her and was like, I don't care. Like, just go. I don't even care enough to get angry at you. It felt very much like your parent being like, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. And you can leave the room now, like close the door behind you. Like daddy has big business to do.
That's exactly what it felt like.
It's heartbreaking. It's awful. But in real life, like, is she rumored to have had affairs with like several celebrities, including Jack Nicholson? Like, yes. I think she was actually like officially dating Jack Nicholson, and then he left her for some other. I don't know. Jack Nicholson has dated everyone, so like that shouldn't surprise me. But like, it's like, so there's both like celebrities she hung around with who she says she didn't have an affair with, and then there are in fact celebrities that she hung around with that she's like, oh no, it was me and Jack Nicholson. Like, like yeah.
Have you ever seen the theory that Trudeau, current Prime Minister Trudeau, is Fidel Castro's son?
I did not, but I did see something about her hanging out with Castro. So
I sent you a picture on Discord. So Snopes is like, probably not, but like the picture's pretty
does he look like, because the young Castro was supposed to be pretty handsome, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, look, Meg.
Oh. Wow, that middle one? Where Castro has like the sexy wavy hair?
Yeah.
That and their noses are very similar.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it now. I choose to believe it. But yeah, that's the funny thing about like Margaret is you could do a whole movie on Margaret. Like the things, like the number of rumors, the number of things that she has confirmed are true. Like just like her whole life is fantastic. Like there's just so many things. She's written so many books, like tell-alls about her whole life. Like it sounds like after they get divorced, like not just tabloids, but like any magazine that wanted to talk to her, she's like, oh, you want the shit? I will tell you the shit. Like, here you go. Here's everything. Like she was like, I'm not holding back. Like, fuck that guy, everything. So, yeah.
Shouldn't have had a prenup.
Yeah. Well, and the divorce, like I know it's sometime in the 70s, I think, that they end up getting divorced. But like, I forgot what divorce was like before you had no fault divorce. And before we tried to make it more equal and like gender neutral between the parents and like, you know, the idea of spousal support as being kind of a standard thing and child support. And like they show Pierre and Margaret, and it seems like they're with like a family mediator kind of, you know, hashing things out. And he's like, she's not getting a nickel of spousal support. She will not get any child support. When the kids are with her, she's paying. When the kids are with me / my nannies, I'm paying. And that's it. And we're done here.
It's really brutal.
It's awful.
And then he goes to pick the kids up or drop the kids off. And she's like, you've been gone for 3 weeks. I was only supposed to have them for 1 week. And he's like, sorry, I was busy. And she's like, I don't have any money. I'm out of money because I can't work because I have the kids and you're not helping me. And he's like, you want $5? Do you want $5? Is that enough?
Is that when she slaps him or like?
Yeah, she slaps him and he ends up tackling her. I was like,
that was hard. That was hard to watch.
Not only are you not giving her spousal support or child support, but then if it's true that you're dropping the kids off and then just being like gone for way longer than you're supposed to be, like the movie is again telling me that like he's a good dad, he's a good husband, she's the problem. And then also like
showing you that he's awful.
Yeah, but she's the problem because she doesn't have money and she should have the money to cover it.
Totally. Yeah, it's very weird because it's like I totally understand that you could be not a great family man but a great political leader. Like that's common. That's so many of them. But it's weird that the movie kind of wants to be like, no, it's her fault. It's her fault a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Totally it's a little weird.
And then in the background is lots and lots and lots of politics.
So much that it's hard to follow. Yeah.
Like,
so,
okay.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was interesting, so I didn't know at what point in the Trudeau history this movie would end. So like I had no preconceived notion. So I'm watching and it ends like right after 1982. Well, he lives until the year 2000 and his youngest son, Michel, dies in 1998.
Yeah.
He and Margaret mourn together, and then he dies 2 years later of a broken heart. And she goes to the funeral, and there was a comment by her where she's like, just because we're not married anymore doesn't mean that there's no love there between us. So it's like, it's this really interesting, like the last 20 years of his life, you're like, nah, not important. Don't even worry about it.
He wasn't in power, so who cares?
Yet it's been so much time, like all the Margaret sections, there's very little of the politics and like what's going on in the country. And they're spending hours of like Margaret drinking. And I'm like, so do you care about his personal life or do you care about the politics? Because like somehow I feel like I'm lost as to both of them, like what's going on with both of them. But the Margaret section is just, I don't know how I feel about it except unsatisfied. And it does make me want to be like, I want to read more about Margaret to rehabilitate her image after the hack job that this movie did to her.
It feels a little Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah. Very young, a man in power takes advantage of you and everyone says it's your fault.
Yeah, and not only that, but her dad was a politician.
Was Monica Lewinsky's dad a politician also?
No, Margaret's dad.
Margaret's dad was, yeah.
So it may have been like, I can't turn the prime minister down. What's that going to do for my dad's reputation? What's that going to do for my dad's
Yeah.
career?
Yeah. And then Pierre might have been like, well, you know, he makes comments during the movie. Well, you knew, like your dad was a politician. You know how this works. He just doesn't come home for weeks on end and never sees you. Like
Yeah,
that's
but her
what the
dad was
game
like
is.
a governor or something. Like he wasn't like prime
No,
minister of the country.
no,
It's
he's
a
a
little
low
different.
level. Yeah. Yeah. Her dad was around. She's seen him. And
Yeah.
and that's the other interesting thing is it's like, I know in 2002, Justin was not prime minister yet, Justin Trudeau. But like, it would be really interesting to see something about his childhood and like him growing into prime minister. Because it seems like he never sees his father. Like based on this movie, like it ends with him, I don't know, maybe 8 years old, like 9 years. Like he's still pretty young, but he's a little bit older than his two brothers.
Yeah.
But it's like, how does, like, what an interesting story that would be. Like the child of this absentee, brilliant man, prime minister, who then grows up to himself be prime minister. Like what is your life like? Like, what was your childhood like with Margaret? Like,
Yeah.
And so this movie was so frustrating. So not only is it like a fun peek into what divorce was like with a wealthy, powerful man in the 70s, spoiler alert, not fun, but they also have, and I don't remember if this is, I think this is there's like two separate, I don't know, like plans that they have. And I think the first plan is that the kids stay with Pierre. He has full custody because they're like, well, Margaret's fucking all the members of the Rolling Stones, so she can't take care of the children. So I think she only gets like limited visitation, and it's like, well, they're going to be with him all the time. And there's no question as to like, he's never home. He's the prime minister, and he like sleeps in his office on purpose for 12 minutes, and then he's back to work again like some kind of freaky owl. Like, like the kids are being raised by a series of nannies, and that's the choice you pick over their mom, Margaret, because she smoked a doobie one time in her, in the prime ministerial mansion. Like, really?
Yep.
And then when they make the agreement later, it's you're not getting money for you, you're not getting money for the kids, but I guess I'll let you have them half the time, I guess, because I'm a nice guy. It's just, I don't know.
I'm such a good dad.
It's heartbreaking. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to know more about, so there's the three children. Justin's the oldest. Alexander, who goes by Sasha, is the middle one. And then Michelle is the youngest one, who dies. I thought at first, I was like, I heard skiing and then I heard swimming, and it turns out it's both. He was skiing. He's knocked over by an avalanche into the lake, and they never find his body, which is the most horrifying fucking thing I can possibly imagine. They never find his body. Right. 20 years later, they never find his body. No. But like the Margaret and the children story, like that is an excellent, interesting story. And somehow they fucked it up, but also gave it like way too much airtime. Like, I don't know how to, like it's, but anyway, so the movie like cares and doesn't care. But the two things that it does care about in terms of politics, I was very glad that they focused on. I was very interested in it. And I also had to read a book and like watch 3 videos and have my dad tell me what was going on, because the movie does not care that you understand a goddamn thing. So I'm going to do the best I can. Probably it's not very good. So the first thing that they focus on, it's 1970. So Trudeau has been prime minister for like 2 years. And we have what's called the October crisis. If you just Google October crisis, like this, I guess this is the only crisis anyone's ever had in October. So this is the one that comes up.
Oh, excellent.
So my understanding, take it with a grain of salt, is this. So we have Quebec. The majority of the people who live in Quebec speak French as their main language, or in fact, possibly their sole language. But because Canada was mostly settled by the British and they beat the French at some point in time in the past, I don't know, the people that were running Quebec, that had the best jobs in Quebec, that had the government jobs in Quebec, that owned the businesses in Quebec, were all English speaking. And some of them were in fact foreign companies that came into Quebec, but they were all speaking English. So like, it worked out for them. And so all the people who got the crappy jobs, the rural jobs, the bad paying jobs, that was all the francophones. And that had gone on since Canada exists, it sounds like. So everyone's like, there's more. It's like apartheid in South Africa. There's more of us. Why are we getting the shaft? So that's going on from time immemorial. We start getting, and to add like an extra twist to the screw, the premier of Quebec, the premiers of Quebec tended to be people that like were at home, like French speaking. They were from the French population, but the people with power are the ones who speak English. So they were kissing ass to the interests of the Anglophone population, even though The Francophone population is the one that elected you. You were one of us. And then they turn around and they're just pushing the Anglophone interests at the expense of the Francophone populace. So
I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah. Yeah. Weird, right? I don't nothing relating to nothing that we're dealing with now. So we get to the premier of Quebec called Maurice Duplessis. He was Francophone. He's kissing English ass, and he kisses English ass so fucking much that like everyone else had done it. He did it so much that like everyone was taking note of it. So like think about the level of ass kissing that we're talking about, where everyone else is an ass kisser and your ass kissing is somehow notable compared to all the ass kissing that came before. So everyone fucking hates this guy. He dies in 1959, which the movie decides to show during the 1970s. It just like has like an insert of Duplessis in his coffin and like a little like words on the screen that are like Duplessis 1959, and then it goes back to the 70s, which is confusing as fuck. Just here's a dead guy back to the 70s. It's why movie, why? So that's who that corpse is when you get to that point in the movie and there's just a random corpse. That's Duplessis. So during this time period, we have many, many, many separatist groups of varying levels of respectability and varying levels of violence. Like some of them, like the Parti Québécois, they're still around. They're on the more respectable end. They're trying to get their goals through politics. You have the FLQ, which is Front de Libération du Québec. So the FLQ, the Liberation Front of Quebec. They are on the other side and they're tossing bombs at everyone that they can toss a bomb at. So that's another thing that I feel like the movie did not do a good job of showing me, because they make it sound like there's like 3 guys and 3 bombs and all of a sudden the army comes in. When I went to Wikipedia and also real history books, don't at me for Wikipedia, it sounds like the bombings had been ramping up since the 60s. So we have all these parties, they get to the 60s, they start throwing bombs. In the 60s, they had thrown 200 bombs. 200 bombs had gone off in Quebec. Quebec ain't that big. Do you know what I mean? This is not, like, this is crazy to me because I grew up and I had no idea. Because by the time I'm a child, Quebec is for French people, run by French people, fuck the English-speaking people. I guess if we have to have, like, English on the sign, it'll be smaller under the French in much bigger letters. Go fuck yourself, don't come to town. So, like, the idea that, like, that wasn't always like that blew my goddamn mind. I was like, what do you mean the English were in charge of Quebec? It's Quebec. Mind blown. So throwing bombs, 200 bombs before 1970. People are murdering people. People have been caught. People have been sent to prison. People have attempted kidnappings. Like, it sounds like anytime you have any foreign dignitary walk into Quebec, there's like 3 guys with bandanas over their mouths trying to throw them in the back of a car. Like, it's the wild goddamn West. It's insane. It's like Ireland during the Troubles. It's like apartheid South Africa in Quebec. Nobody told me. Nobody fucking told me. So
I had no idea.
I had no idea. I'm mad about having no idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is my country and my people. And I had no idea that Quebec was like on fire for most of the 60s. Nobody fucking told me. Anyways, I'm mad about it. So, okay. So it's October 1970. Shit's been ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. The FLQ is like, what if, hear me out, we ramp it up more. So it's October 5th. They kidnap the British Trade Commissioner, James Cross. The Front de Libération du Québec, they send a ransom note about Cross to the authorities. I don't know, the government, somebody. Wikipedia and the movie did not care that I know who got the letter, but they send a letter. They're like, hi, we want all of our political prisoners freed, aka the bomb throwers and the murderers. We would like them to get out, please. We would like them sent on a plane to Cuba. Cuba's going to love us. Because, I don't know, Fidel is in love with Margaret, I guess. So he'll let them all come in. It'll be fine. And we want our manifesto read on the news in French and English. The manifesto actually does get broadcast on the news, which is already crazy to me. Like, that you'd be watching the news and, like, the Unabomber's manifesto would be read out loud, like, in full. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Mind-blowing. So we have the manifesto. October 10th, we have a second kidnapping. They kidnap a Quebec cabinet minister called Pierre Laporte. Things are bad. So we have 2 guys kidnapped. And this is the point where I started freaking out in the movie, because we have the Montreal police and they're like, oh yeah, we know about all the separatist groups. Like, we know the guys, we know where they hang out. We know, like, this group wants this and that group wants that. We have a whole chart. We got a whole binder. the RCMP and the federal government don't know shit because nobody talks to each other. And I was like, what do you mean nobody talks? Quebec is on fire. Like, nobody talks to anybody. There's 200 bombs. Like, nobody talks to anybody. And they have this cabinet meeting where the RCMP is like, FLQ question mark? And I was losing my shit. I was so angry. I was like, how? Like, how? Because it literally was like, we didn't think this would ever be a problem outside of Quebec, so we didn't think we needed to tell anybody anything. Oops, they done burned all the buildings down. I guess we have to call in the federal government. Like, it felt like we didn't think this was going to be an issue, and now it turns out, I guess it is. Like, like a lack of foresight that is so frustrating that I want it to be a fictional. I want it to be totally made up for this movie, because if it's real, I have letters to write to government officials who are definitely dead. Like, I'm mad about it. So, we have people not sharing power, which is kind of a theme throughout this whole movie. And then there's a lot of like, who actually has the power to order what where, which is also frustrating, because I kind of always thought that the difference between provinces and states was that with provinces, like, you're all the sub-provinces of the federal, so we're all going to get along because I kind of work for you only at like a granular level. And that with states, they're all like, no, we're our own little thing, federalism, blah, blah, blah. But like, this movie posits that it's actually like federalism on speed. They're like, no, I don't work for you. And in fact, I'm not going to tell you shit. But sometimes I would like some money and also the federal army, please. But it's this weird level of like animosity that I don't know if it's still in place or if it's just well, from what we see later in the movie, it's clearly not just a Quebec thing, but like a weird level of like fighting over power.
Yeah, I hate how much you can tell me to do kind of thing.
Yeah, fuck you. I know that all of our people are currently on fire and running through the streets of Montreal with bombs up their butts, but like I don't want you to come in here, because then that means taking some authority from me, and I don't want that. So I guess we'll all just die. That's better. Like, it's just so aggravating, so angering to watch this. But anyways, they end up having the Quebec government formally ask the feds to bring the goddamn army in, and to not just ask for like army guys to help out, but they implement the War Measures Act. And I was like, what's that? What's the War Measures Act? Fucking martial law in Quebec in the 70s. And I was like, are you kidding me? The only time that this act was ever used during peacetime in Quebec in October 1970, it stripped people of their right, like their martial law. Like, I can't even, this act, by the way, no longer exists. The War Measures Act is no longer in place, but there is the Emergencies Act. And my understanding is that it also has like we're going to impose martial law clause in there. It has not been used yet, but like, and like, I'm not naive. Like, I realize that like, you could impose martial law in the States. I'm sure there are situations where there's the ability to do that. Mm-hmm. But like, we
do that pretty frequently.
I'm sure from now on, frankly.
During any disaster, they'll declare martial law.
Yeah. Well, I guess just like seeing it happen like in this clear-cut way, where they bring in the army, they bring in the RCMP, they bring in tanks, and they have tanks outside of Parliament buildings, and they arrest 497 people to then only charge 62. So they arrested 430 whatever people with not even enough to charge them. Because like, obviously you could charge somebody and then, or like suggest to the DA's office that they be charged, and the DA is like, no, not enough. Or you could charge them, they go to trial, and a jury finds them not guilty of whatever the fuck you charge them with. This wasn't enough to get to the charging decision, which means they were basically knocking on every door and going, I don't know, you smell like cheese and cigarettes, get in the back of my van. Like, it's just, it's so horrifying to me. And it's so it's like horrifying on two levels, right? Because they're showing, here's what's actually happening in Quebec. The movie is frustrating for not really giving you a full sense of like how violent it was, not just the 200 bombs that had been exploding like throughout the 60s, but how violent it is in October of 1970. Because I was watching the Film Board of Canada, shout out to the Film Board of Canada, makers of Ikwe, so I love them forever.
Mhm.
They had there's a documentary that someone has uploaded onto YouTube, and it was all about October 1970. And they literally at one point in this documentary go through, like, here's all the places that were bombed in October, like at the same time that they're kidnapping these two guys. And the list went on for like 12 minutes. It's government buildings, it's private businesses, it's post offices, it's your personal mailbox. It's like, it was going on. It was like a list of like 25 different places where bombs were put.
Wow.
And I think like a couple of them, the bombs are put and they find them before they explode or they like diffuse them or whatever. But bombs were going off. I think the Montreal Stock Exchange gets blown up, like just like everywhere all the time. And I feel like in the movie, they don't do a great job of showing you just how dire things are. But they're like, here's what people will enjoy to watch: bickering in an office. That's fun for the whole audience. And I'm like, no, like 30 bombs going off, 20 bombs, like more than one bomb going off is a lot of bombs going off in one city. That's insane. So I feel like, if anyone wants a better sense of this, like pull up the Film Board of Canada documentaries and stuff that they did. Like just Google October Crisis 1970. There's lots of people who are doing a much more effective job of showing you how dire it is, because you see how dire it is and then you're like, okay, I don't like martial law, but I get it. And in this movie, I feel like I don't get it when I'm watching it. I'm like, you guys are just bitching at each other. You don't seem concerned. Like you're spending so much effort bitching. I feel like if you were actually concerned with all of Montreal being exploded, you would be acting and not bitching with each other. Like you'd be doing something. Yeah. So I feel like it's like, this is such an easy thing to dramatize. Like this is such an easy thing to like bring the audience in. And somehow they managed to fuck that up. And I was like, bombs, how do you fuck up bombs? You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, so we have the War Measures Act. We have all these people who are arrested. Only 62 are charged. So this is, I don't know, I didn't write the date, but it's between October 10th, October 17th. By the 17th, the FLQ sends out some kind of a note. I don't know. They get the word out that Pierre Laporte, so the Quebecois minister, he is dead. And the movie makes the interesting choice of showing an actual photo of Pierre Laporte's corpse.
Yeah.
So thanks for that movie.
Yeah,
but
in the trunk of a car.
In the trunk of a car. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Yeah. He is strangled and then dumped in the trunk of a car. And the FLQ like sends out a note on the 17th being like, oh, you wanted to arrest everybody? Fuck me. Fuck you. There's a car parked over here in this alley. If you pop open the trunk, there's a fun surprise inside. And the fun surprise was Pierre Laporte's corpse. So we end up, so the movie also doesn't do a good job about telling you what happens to James Cross, because at one point they think he's dead. And then the movie does not correct itself. He didn't die. He was alive. I was going to say he was fine. He was not fine, but he was alive. He was in captivity for something like 60 days. 60 days with the FLQ in some, hole of a warehouse or whatever in Montreal. And then they end up releasing him. And I don't remember why, but they don't end up catching the last guys until the end of December. So all of October, all of November, all of December, there's martial law, there's bombs being thrown, there's tanks everywhere, people are being arrested who have nothing to do with anything. And the kidnappers don't get found until it's almost New Year's. There's your movie.
Wow.
There's your dramatic thing to watch.
But they're like, what about Margaret, though? Can we just fast forward to Margaret?
Yeah. Give me the interesting parts of Margaret, not her drinking and crying, like, for 2 hours. This movie is so all over the place. But again, if you watch this and you don't actually understand what the October Crisis is, it's just incomprehensible. But the crazy thing to me, because this whole movie is crazy, but the crazy thing to me is Trudeau is from Quebec. He has no like real love for Quebec, especially not the separatists, because this whole thing is like nationalism, like we're all one country. Stop trying to fucking go your own way. Like that's horse shit. You're breaking the country apart. We need to unite together. So like whatever I have to do to bring us all together, I'm going to do that, but we need to be one. So like even though he's from Quebec, his Quebecois feeling in his heart is petit. It's very small.
Yeah.
But even so, you're the prime minister and there's one of your provinces is like entirely being blown up by bombs and there's people sending you manifestos and there's people that are kidnapped. Like you think that you would care. And his total lack of give a shit in this scene is remarkable. Because it's like when you said there's that scene with him and Margaret and she's like, well, if it were us, you would do anything to save us. And he's like, no, I wouldn't actually. No, I would not.
No.
But like, he doesn't even seem to care to save these people. Like,
There's just that scene where he's gonna go to the parade, and they're like, "We don't think you should go to the parade," and he's like, "I'm going
Yeah,
to the
I always
parade."
go to the parade. Yeah,
I always go. I've never missed a parade. I'm going to the parade.
Yeah, the Saint Jean Baptiste Day parade, which I know enough to know that that's like a big deal in Quebec, but like in terms of the what and the why, I don't really know. But I know I think it's sort of like the St. Patrick's Day parade, where it's like it's a big thing for that French speaking community, and it was a big deal for him to show up. And I think it's right before he's elected prime minister. I think it's like the late 60s.
Yeah.
But yeah, they show him sitting there. That this really happened. They show him sitting there, like in his little seat, watching the parade, and people are throwing beer bottles and shit at him, and he's like ninja ducking out of the way. He's like, "No, I came to see the floats," and I'm like, "What the fuck is it?" He is angrier about people trying to stop him from going to the parade than he is about either getting bottles thrown at his head or Quebec being on fire.
Yeah.
It is just. And like I say, it's not Colm Feore being a bad actor. He's an excellent actor. It's just this miniseries is it's so hard to put together who Trudeau is from this. Like, all I care about is politics. All I care about is the country. Oh, Quebec is on fire? I don't actually care about that. I don't care about you, Margaret. You're definitely bottom of the list.
This is not an education moment for you if you don't know who Trudeau is. This is a Trudeau fan service miniseries.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fan service, and then it shows him being cold and cruel, but like it wants you to be impressed by it, maybe?
Yeah, look how dedicated he is to his career.
Yeah.
He did this for you. He torpedoed his relationship for you. For Canada.
He stopped fucking his child bride for you, Canada.
For Canada. It
does kind of feel like they want you to go, wow, he cares so much about national unity that he doesn't give a crap about Quebec. But it's hard to say that as a sentence and have it make sense. It's just very weird. It's a confusing picture of a man. Like he somehow only cares about politics, except when he does not care at all about politics. The movie? I don't know. So then we get to the part that I was actually the most interested and the most confused about, and also the part where Ger shows up. So now the audience can wake up. Yeah.
We're an hour and a half in. Ger arrives.
We're an hour and a half into this recording. We are like 7 hours into the movie.
Into this recording, yeah, no. Yeah, you're 48 hours into the 3.5 hour long movie.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, time works backwards when you watch a Ger property. Fun fact. So 3 weeks in, he will show up. You will have a general sense of horniness, and then you'll see him.
Yeah.
So we get to 1982 and patriation. So my not very good understanding of Canadian history is this. So we have the British North America Act. That's 1867. That's why we see Canada, its birthday is July 1st, 1867, because that's the British North America Act that makes Canada, but it makes us as a British colony. So we were like half a country, sort of, basically. We could have our provincial legislatures, and they work the same way as in the States, where there's the two houses, and then, lower house says thumbs up and upper house says thumbs up, and then your governor, or in Canada, it's your premier of the province says like thumbs up. And
bicameral.
Yes, thank you. So then it's the same system, except in the US, you have the two houses and your governor, and then you're done, you have a law. In Canada, until 1982, you have your two houses and your premier, and then you have to go ring, ring, Queen Elizabeth. It would be super cool if you signed off on this. And we have someone called the Governor General, and my understanding, and it might not be right, is that right now, like currently today, that position is pretty much just a figurehead. Like you go to the opening of malls and you kiss babies and stuff. But before 1982, you were actually the Queen's representative in Canada. So when they went, Lizzie, will you sign this? Lizzie said, hey, Governor General, stamp this with my name on it. Cool. All right. I'm going to go pet my corgis. Like that's how it would work. So the same thing with the federal government. House 1, House 2, and then the prime minister's like, please. And then Queen Elizabeth goes, nah. And then you don't have a law. Like you have to ask for permission.
Okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's just rubber stamping. But if there's something that England does not want to do, you don't get your law. Like you're begging them to make you a real boy, basically. So we were like half a country until 1982, 5 years before I was born. That's too close. That's too close to when I was born that we became a real country. We were Pinocchio before this. Like,
history must be farther in the past. This is known.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't even grasp it. I watched this movie and I was like, what? What? No, no, we were a country. Since 1860, we were a country. And then I'm watching this and I'm like, not really. Fucking not really. This whole time we were just like England's big toe and they wiggled it when they felt like it. And we just lived that life. So, Trudeau, the very first thing you see him doing, even before he's prime minister, even before the people talk to him about being running in the Liberal Party to be elected as prime minister, you see him talking about wanting to have a charter of rights and wanting a real constitution. Like that's the first thing out of his mouth. So then we have 3 hours of Margaret drinking and crying. And then we get to patriation in 1982. So he's still trying it all this time later. So this is when he's come back. This is his second round as prime minister because no one likes Joe Clark. Fuck that guy, I guess. Sorry, Joe Clark. So we have this constitutional conference, and Trudeau is talking with all of the premiers of all of the provinces. And I don't think at this point that we have the territories. I don't think, because they only talk about the premiers of the provinces. So I don't think we have. I know we don't have Nunavut because that was when I was a kid, but I know I don't think we have Yukon or Northwest Territories. I don't think. But so we have all the premiers of all the provinces and their attorney generals sitting next to them at this big round table, this big rectangle table, and they're all bitching and moaning about what they want. Because at this point, all of the premiers, their concern, according to my dad, and not the movie because the movie doesn't give a shit that I know anything, is basically we already have so little power. The federal government of Canada is taking so much from us already. You want something from me. You want me to co-sign with you trying to get our own constitution. Well, then you have to play ball with me. You have to give me something. Give me some more freedom. Give me some more freedom from your rules. Give me some more money. Stop dicking around in my affairs. If I'm Alberta and I have lots of oil, stop telling me how much I can sell it for because it's like a national good. Fuck that. It's my good. I'm Alberta. It's mine. Like, let me sell it for whatever I want to so I can make my own money. Like they're all bitching and they all have their own like industries.
It's an independence grab.
Yes.
It's like yeah.
So because they're already feeling like we have nothing. You're asking me for something. You're gonna play with me. So Trudeau's like, fuck that. No, I'm Trudeau. Suck this dick. And he like keeps leaving. He's like, pass. No. So, he and Jean Chrétien, who is one of his ministers, who later will become prime minister when I was a kid. And spoiler alert, the actor who's doing him does his voice so perfectly. I also cannot explain his voice to you if you've never heard him, because if you're like, well, he was from Quebec, he had a Quebecois accent. No, he had this insane accent that is somehow Frencher than any French person has ever Frenched ever. It's a weird accent, right? I mean, did it not stand out to you while watching this? Like what is happening to this man? But
yes.
His weird giant head and his weird accent, mwah, chef's kiss. Perfect. So thank you, actor playing Jean Chrétien. So Chrétien and Trudeau are like, well, like it would be cool. It would be cool premiers if we had your sign off. I think Queen Elizabeth would like it better if we handed her a piece of paper and we're like, hey, everyone in Canada is thumbs up on this. So you want to sign off, Lizzie? Like that would be good. But we don't actually need you fools. Okay. We're being nice to you. We don't need shit from you because if you recall, all we need is the House of Commons and the Senate and they both say yes. Well, then we go straight to Lizzie. So they're like, we just need the federal legislature. We just need both houses of it to say yes. And then we go straight to Lizzie. Where do you see the premiers in there? Oh, spoiler alert, they're not. We don't need you fools at fucking all. And the premiers are like, hang on a second. Fuck you. Fuck your mother. You do need us. You can't just amend the Constitution, make a whole fucking new one, create whatever the hell a Charter of Rights and Freedoms is. No, you need us, you bastard. So they're having this big fight about whether they're even necessary to this process. You have all of these court cases. All the courts are saying different things because that's how that goes. It goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, and the Supreme Court of Canada is apparently, 7 and 6 is 13? There's 13 justices. Spoiler alert, they split 7-6, being like, no, Trudeau doesn't need you fools. But because it's 7-6, everyone decides that they won. And I'm like, but no, 7 is the bigger number. The 7s win. Turns out, no, I don't know. So, I don't know how anything works anymore, it turns out. But so it's just this giant fucking fight. So we then end up having like Big Brother Canadian Politics Edition. And all the premiers get together in scenes that are somehow compelling and boring and confusing all at once. There's a lot happening and also nothing happening.
That's because Ger might show up in any scene now. You're like, Ger, no.
Well, that's the best part. So they have actors playing every one of the premiers, and there's 10 of them. They don't have everyone in every scene, and they should have them wearing a fucking button or something to help me remember who is who. Because, like, Ger is playing the premier of Ontario. Like, he's a big deal. Like, you remember him also because he's Ger. The guy playing the premier of Quebec is René Lévesque, and he's the only one with a French accent, and he's gray and shriveled, and he's smoking in every scene. So you're like, that's the Quebec guy. Everybody else could have been one blonde guy changing ties real fast. I couldn't tell any of them apart. They would make a big deal about, like, this is the one from Alberta for like 5 seconds, and then they turn around and all of a sudden it was like a different guy, and I was like, I've gone face blind watching this movie. My brain doesn't work anymore. So they're having all these agreements with each other. Like, if you agree to this, then we'll agree to that, and then we'll have more power because, like, all, like, 6 of us will show up to Trudeau and we'll, like, beat him with a hammer, and then, we'll be in charge. So there's the group of 6, and then there's the group of 8. And I don't know who's part of the group of 6 and who's part of the group of 8, but they're all, like, having gang signs together, and they're all having their different things that they want and their different concerns. But basically, it boils down to, we had no power, we don't want less, we would like more. And Trudeau being like, fuck your mother. So going back and forth and back and forth. So then they eventually get to this point where they're like, okay, we accept that we're cool with this Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and they bring in people from every minority groups. They bring in women, they bring in the Japanese, they bring in the Métis, they bring in Black people, and they get everyone's voice, and they're like, check, we heard their voices, we're going to ignore them, but we can say that we heard their voices, like, good for us. So we have this Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is sort of like the American Bill of Rights, with a fun exception that I'm going to talk about in 1 second. And by fun, I mean, I don't get it, and it makes me mad. Which is maybe the tagline for this episode. I don't get it, and it makes me mad.
Makes mad, yeah.
Pretty much. So we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and then we have the Constitution that they write out. And they're like, okay, if we want to change the Constitution, then you have to have 7 of the 10 provinces say yes to the change. If it's like an everybody affecting change, there's a different rule if it's like an only you change. Like, Newfoundland changed its name to Newfoundland and Labrador. You don't need everyone else to sign off on Newfoundland having a sex change and changing their name. We don't care. But for everybody, 7 of the 10 provinces have to go thumbs up, and that 7 has to equal 50% of all of Canada. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's like 3 guys in Alberta and 2 guys in Saskatchewan, and everyone else is in Ontario and Quebec. So they had wanted a veto earlier, and Trudeau's like, you're not getting a veto. And then they're like, what if all of the people who live in me have to say yes? And Trudeau's like, cool. So they have a veto, but they don't call it a veto. But, like, number-wise, one of the 2 of them has to say yes for you to get 50% of the people in Canada. Like, unless you scoop up half of Ontario and you throw them into Alberta. Like, that's the only way that's not gonna work. So they have basically a backdoor veto. And this is the part that makes me mad. They're like, but what if we don't like rights and freedoms? And I'm like, squeeze me? They're like, what if we don't like that? Well, they have something called the notwithstanding clause, which I had to watch 6 videos about, and I still feel like I don't fully understand, and it makes me mad, but here we go. So the notwithstanding clause is you can have a province, or it turns out the federal government, because Pierre Poilievre, who is the conservative guy who wants to be prime minister, has threatened to use the notwithstanding clause. So apparently it's not just a province thing. It's like he could use it too. You go, I would like to make a law. I acknowledge that this law would violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is like part of the Constitution. It's like sucked in there. I acknowledge that this would violate that. I don't give a shit, but I acknowledge it, okay? Like, I didn't make a mistake. I, on purpose, am saying, fuck this particular right or freedom. I want to do that. It turns out, if you say that, I acknowledge that I am fucking this right and freedom, and I am invoking the notwithstanding clause, you can just fuck that right or freedom for 5 years. And so I was like, okay, is it like 5 years hard deadline? Turns out, no. At the end of 5 years, you can go, I would like to continue fucking this right or freedom. And I guess you can. I guess you can. And so I was like, I don't understand it. And so the way that it's been explained to me that I still don't really understand is they're like, we don't like how in the States you have the Supreme Court going, that's not constitutional, you can't do that, or this does not violate the Constitution, and so it's fine to I don't know, restrict abortion rights to never being able to have an abortion, for an example I pulled out of my butt from nowhere. We don't like that. So
Mhm.
we would like the ability, if the Supreme Court of Canada like did something similar, that we could then, as the provinces, go, actually, we don't agree with that interpretation of the Constitution. Like, I get that you say the Constitution means X. We don't like that. So we're going to make this law that contravenes your version of the Constitution. And I'm like, okay, under that mental pathway or whatever, like I get it sort of, but it seems like that's not how it's used. It's used like in Quebec, they have currently a law that says if you work for the Quebec government, you may have no religious symbols, which I thought was like you can't wear a cross necklace, but you can't wear a hijab, you can't wear a headscarf. You are not allowed to. And if you're a teacher in Quebec, I guess some of the teachers are employed by the government of Quebec. So if you're a teacher wearing a headscarf, congrats, you're no longer a teacher. Or you better take that damn thing off before you walk into the classroom, which is an issue.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how they got that law in. They were like, we get that this is violating the right of religious freedom. We acknowledge it. We don't give two shits. We're going to have this act in place. So, like, the idea that you could be like, here's the rights and freedoms everyone's guaranteed, but not you in Quebec. I feel like the one thing this movie did a good job of was having Trudeau go, what the fuck are you talking about? How do you have a patchwork of rights and freedoms? How do you have the freedom to do something in Alberta, but you can't do it in Saskatchewan? That's insane. Like, I feel like
Go figure. Oh my God. What would that be like?
I know. I know. I don't like it for two reasons. It makes no sense to me two ways. It makes no sense to me from where I live, where they do that shit all the time because it's fun.
Yes.
I don't like it as a thing where they're like, you have to acknowledge you're doing a bad thing, but if you acknowledge you're doing the bad thing, then it's fine. Like,
I think it's probably more like it gives you a chance to shoot your shot. Like, I get that in the Bill of Rights, this is not okay. But, like, what if I said it was, though? Like, what if I tried it out? And then if after 5 years it's really working, you could come back and be like, hey, I kind of Wild West, like, railroaded this through, and it seems to be working really well for the people in my province. I can make a really good case.
Yeah. Well, and that's fair
amendment.
too. It's with 5 years, I can see it being possible that in 5 years you have a different Supreme Court and maybe you get a good one. I don't know. That could be fun. And then you go to them again, and now that they're favorable to you, all of a sudden this thing that the old Supreme Court said was not constitutional now is.
Yeah.
Or
well, now you'd have evidence. You could be like, well, people are using it this way, and it's really working out for us. Like the no wearing headscarf thing, they're probably not going to be able to go and be like, wow, everybody feels really free because they're not allowed to express themselves.
Yeah, no child feels compelled to become Muslim by watching a lady wear a really cool headscarf. Like,
right. So that one's probably just going to crap the bed. Like, they're going to get their moment with it, and it's going to have to go away.
Or they'll just keep pushing. Like, that's the thing that makes me feel crazy, is because it's like Quebec, I don't know how it is today, but like, France and the Catholic Church have a long intertwined history. So Quebec used to be very, very, very Catholic. I kind of thought they were less Catholic than that now. But then when you turn around and you're like, hey, clear, visible signs of religion are not good. And I'm like, so if you're wearing a cross necklace like under your sweater, probably no one's going to be like, what's on the end of that chain? But if I walk into my office wearing a full-on headscarf, you're probably not going to assume I'm just having a bad hair day. Like, you're probably going to assume it's a religious sign. I don't know.
It's probably more of like if a thing is that unpopular, then within 5 years there'll be turnover in the government.
Well, and that too. Yeah, and that too. But it's just like,
so they wouldn't be able to get it passed again because they're not in power anymore.
You're not in power anymore. But it's hard for me, like, conceptually to be like, so if I say, like, I acknowledge that this thing is not allowed, then I can do it for funsies? Like, that's
because you could really hurt people with. Yeah. It's one of those things where it turns out that government works or has been working because everybody just had a whole network of like handshake understandings. Like, that's not, we don't do that. That's not good. And then when a spoiler alert, if you get somebody in power who doesn't give a shit about your handshakes and just does what they want anyway,
Yeah.
it all kind of fucking falls apart. So to leave a back door that's like, I can do what I want as long as I tell you that I know that I'm not supposed to do it, feels real risky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what's
Yeah.
funny is like, I found a kind of a short little video from the CBC, and it was mainly focused on Pierre Poilievre has been talking about the notwithstanding clause so much that they were like, well, let's explain it to our audience, so that you know what it is. And they made a point of saying, like, they mentioned the law in Quebec with the religious symbols, but they had said like, it's been invoked so infrequently because it is a very dangerous political tool to stand up and be like, hi, fuck your rights. Here's what I'm going to do for funsies because I can. But it is sort of equally dangerous to what the situation feels like now in the States, where just because everyone in the past, I don't know, believed that laws mattered and existed, doesn't mean that perhaps people in the future will agree that laws exist and are real and valuable.
Yeah, probably a good another better like analogy for it would be like the way warfare used to be conducted.
Oh yeah,
Where it was
gentlemanly.
literally like you just gentlemanly warfare. You arrived on the where you were going to have your battle. Women could come and set up picnics because no one was going to shoot at anybody who was not a combatant. It was going to be fine. And then you have like the American Civil War where they start burning whole towns with civilians in them.
Yeah.
And people are like, but you can't do that. And it's
Yeah,
like,
we had
really, no,
unspoken rules.
I could have done that this whole time, but there was a network of unspoken rules that prevented me from doing it. But there's nothing actually stopping me from doing it. So the first time someone's like, but have we tried just doing it? It all kind of falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
thought there were walls protecting us, and it turns out that was
there
just
were
me saying the
never.
word wall really loudly,
It
and it
was
turns
just
out that
like,
doesn't make a wall.
yeah, it was just like gentlemanly politics. That was all it
Yeah. Yeah.
ever was, and now it's all gone.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
people in that video being like, well, everyone was really cautious about using it in the past and, only in very limited particular situations. And it didn't always work out for them. And sometimes people would threaten to use it and then get so much backlash that they wouldn't even get to use it. They were like, no, I changed my mind. I don't know that Pierre Poilievre is not going to be a Donald Trump-like character for Canada. I don't know that everyone in the past pinky swearing not to use the notwithstanding clause for evil means that he won't do that he won't actually use it because fuck you, I can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a real thing.
Yeah. Politics are a bummer. So the Ger character, as we said, is the movie. So we get everyone ends up having this agreement. They kind of figure out how they're gonna what the Constitution will look like. The provinces don't lose that much in terms of like oversight. I mean, like a little. They have some opt out. I think there's the thing where they're like, if we don't like a government program, that we don't have to take it, but then we won't get the government money, which feels kind of like how the spending clause, like that spending clause power works in the States. So like similar. So they're not totally fucked, but they're like mainly fucked because Trudeau just did whatever he wanted. So. But they all end up agreeing. I think everyone except for Quebec. They go to Queen Elizabeth. She's like, cool. She comes to Canada. There's a great big signing ceremony. And in June or July, wait, let me look. Oh, wait, April. Neither one of those dates. April. In April 1982, a warm month-ish, we become like an actual legit country that can be in charge of ourselves and do what we want without having to ask for England's permission. And again, I'm having a real hard time with it being 1982. Like that just feels insane. And I was asking my dad about it and he was like, I was like, no, tell me all the things. And he's like, I was in my 20s. Like I didn't give a shit. I didn't pay attention. And I'm like, how did you not pay attention to this momentous change? Like this crazy world shaking change. But then like, you're in your 20s, you're living your life, and the government is going to do what the government's going to do. And it's not really changing your life. You're not in the legislature changing things. But like conceptually, it's like if before 1982 the planet rotated backwards and I didn't know, and all of a sudden they're like, well, yeah, in 82 we used rockets and Superman, and then the world turned the other way, and that's how we weren't all killed by tidal waves. Like, mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing, and I'm frustrated that this movie does not actually care that you understand it. They're just like, what if we have a lot of guys in, dress shirts that are weirdly baggy on them, and they all just
so baggy
smoke cigarettes in a room. There's a scene where the Ger character walks like directly in front of the camera, and it is like 80% shirt and 20% man. I don't know.
He speed runs his characteristics too. He's like, I got 5 minutes. Here we fucking go.
I do like that his character was the Where's Waldo of this movie, because for the first 2 hours and 73 minutes, I was like, where are you? Where are you? Are you where? And then the last 10 minutes of the movie, he keeps popping up too fast to see. So I had to keep, so they have, so to get a mental image, the room that everyone, the big room that Trudeau and all the premiers are in when they're having their official in front of the public discussions is a series. It's 4 long tables to make a big rectangle with a hole in the middle, if you can imagine that. So they're all sitting in a big rectangular circle. So the camera is directly in the middle and spins around really, really quickly so that you see all of the premieres, but only in a blink of an eye. So I had to sit there and go full extra special video watcher and keep and being pause and reverse, pause and reverse, pause and reverse until I could catch the Ger scenes. They are too fast for the human eye, and he is doing characteristics in every one of them. It is
eyebrows.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. So we've got bemused eyebrows at all the horseshit that's happening. We have him wearing a tie and being sort of a pain in the ass for Trudeau. So I'm going to say that's a half characteristic for him being an evil character.
He has a 4XL shirt on. He's got a pipe, which he never actually smokes. He just uses
well,
it,
the one time he has a cigar and he just erotically chomps on it a couple of times, and I was like, sir, good job. But yeah, no, it's hand acting. So it's hand acting with nothing, hand acting with the pipe, hand acting with the cigar. But yeah, I'm aware that in the 80s and 90s, men's dress shirts, and maybe women's too, but especially men's, were slightly of a looser cut, a baggier cut than they are today. I'm aware. This movie goes well beyond that. There is no giving any kind of historical verisimilitude. No, they were Ger, what size are you? And he's like, I don't know, a men's large. And they're like, all right, I heard 6X. And it's puffy. He's mushroom shaped. It billows behind him like a sail. I don't even know what that. And it's great because there's one scene when it's all the premieres and they're smoking and bitching in this little room. And Ger is the only one. He has to be the center of attention because he does. So he's the only one who gets up and walks around, and he walks almost directly into the camera, and it's all shirt. There's one tiny face and then just blowing shirt. It's beautiful. I love it. His character has 5 minutes of screen time. The one time he shows up at Trudeau's house and meets the housekeeper, he goes eyebrow, and then he does the Ger, I'd hit that face. And I'm like, sir, you are Bill Davis, the Premier of Ontario. Would Bill Davis have done the I'd fuck that face? Maybe, possibly. The movie does not tell me.
I fully believe he was in character. I have no notes. It's who Bill is now.
I'm sure. And he has a character who has a total of 3 minutes of screen time, and he manages to get 2 speeches in. He has one speech when he's talking to Trudeau in his house where he's like, we can't agree on this. And I know everyone else said that they'd agree, but I'm Ontario and I'm the only one who matters. I'm important. Here's my dick. I'm laying it on the table. Suck it. Goodbye. So beautiful, chef's kiss. And then when then the scene where he's got his shirt billowing around him like a sail, everyone else has two words of dialogue. They're all bitching and moaning at each other. He gets to stand up and have a whole speech, a whole here's the things that I think are important, and Alberta's with me, and we're all cool on this. So you guys figure out your shit. Ontario out, and then he takes Alberta behind him, and they peace out. But it's no one else, none of the other premiers gets to have a whole speech. None of them gets to go to Trudeau's house and shoot the shit with Comfior. But it's Ger and it's Ontario, so you can all suck my dick. I'm gonna do it. So he gets to go full Shakespeare. I love it. I feel were there other characters? I mean, he in the little scenes where it's spinning around him, he's doing every facial expression we've ever seen him do, but in speed run form. Did we miss any?
He doesn't get to make out with anybody. He's
Except his pipe and cigar.
just a lot of hand acting in his faces, really. And then checking out, like, the one woman he's allowed to interact with. He's like, "I'd hit it." And you're like, "Okay, there he is. Yeah, no."
It's not even subtle, and that's my favorite part. So they do this, again, inexplicable thing where there's a scene, Garrett knocks on the door of the Prime Minister's house, the maid answers it, you see him walk in like 2 feet, he's like, this is not a social call. The movie then cuts to like 12 other scenes, and then like 30 minutes later goes, oh yeah, Garrett was at the Prime Minister's house, and then it cuts back to finish that scene. So the first part is like 12 seconds long, and he manages to go walk in, eyebrow, lady, and I was like, seriously? Fucking seriously? You're gonna eye fuck the maid?
He got one shot. He had to take it. Okay,
that is true. There is not a woman within 30 feet of him for the rest of the movie, and I guess I know why, because he would have been doing the eye fuck move.
They were like, "Sir, you're giving Bill a bad name," and he was like, "I think I'm elevating Bill right now."
I'm giving Bill a great name.
What, was he dead? Come on.
He would be into this. I feel bad. I don't know anything about Bill Davis. I know I did ask my mom. I think all she had was like, I don't know, he wasn't that great. Like I got nothing. I have nothing. So Garrett might have done a lot of research and been like, from all the movies in the interviews and stuff that I have conducted, I think Bill Davis would have eye fucked the maid at Trudeau's house. Just perfect. But I mean, I did like his speeches. I thought his speeches were good, and it was fun. He does look very much like him, although I will say,
he really does.
In the pictures I saw of Bill Davis, which did appear to be around the 80s, like just based on the outfits he was wearing, that man was gray. I like that Ger was like, no. If I'm playing him, blonde, beautiful blonde hair. He was still platinum blonde in the 80s, man.
They tried to dye his hair. It did. And then like it did the thing from Forever Night where his hair just went and turned back into gold.
The color could not hold.
Yep.
It's just raw sexuality, and it's like, we can't be gray. But he does get to make he has a good like West Wing style argument with Trudeau, where Trudeau's like, we won't even be a country worthy of the name if we can't get this done. Why are you all, pissing on each other and biting for like tiny scraps of power? Like, why are you doing this at the expense of us being able to be a real goddamn country where we don't have to ask an entirely different country, mother may I, for all of our laws? Like, do you not see how important and valuable this is? And Ger's character gets to be like, well, you're being kind of a little bitch right now, and you're making me feel bad. Like, it was good. He was good. It was great. I really enjoyed it. He was able to be like sassy and like, no, I have my concerns and you have your concerns, and you're just trying to guilt trip me so that you can continue to walk all over us the way you have always walked all over us. You have no sympathy for anybody else. Like, you want this because you want this to be your legacy. Like, you don't actually care about anybody else, which is a theme that the movie maybe doesn't realize it's hitting home on, but like it makes it pretty clear that Trudeau as a man is not a person of warmth who cares about like the actual impact on anybody's lives. Like, he just, like, to me personally, like, this is the right thing for our country, and I care about the country but not the people, is kind of the vibe that it gets off. So like I like that they're showing how crafty he was in dealing with all the premiers. And I also like that they have Bill Davis be like, cut the shit, man. Like, we know, like, you want something and I want something. I'm not the only one who's doing deals and like trying to manipulate things so that I can get some power for me, or I can get a thing that maybe I legitimately think is good for Ontario. Do you know what I mean? Like your concerns are not the only correct ones. Like, stop trying to pull this shit, this footsie bullshit. Like, so I did like those scenes. I thought he acted it very well. But like I say, if you're not coming to this with an understanding already of what you're going to see, and like, I don't know that this podcast will be enough of a background primer for you, frankly. But if you're coming to it from zero, this movie does not care. This movie does not care, and it bolts straight ahead. And then there's like 2 hours of just watching Margaret cry, and then back to bolting straight ahead into Canada doing patriation in 82. Like, I've never seen anything like this. It's very weird. Like, I feel like I've seen, you know, similar biopic movies about like American presidents or other like historical figures. And even when it's someone like Nixon, who was, you know, before I was born, but is someone who is so deeply ensconced in the culture and pop culture of America that I feel like I have at least like a base level of understanding. Even a movie about Nixon, I feel like would be like, hey, what was Watergate? Like, why did they want to break in? What was there that they should break in? Like, what do you know what I mean? Like, it would give you like some kind of a framework. This is just like if you turned on the Nixon movie and they just had people breaking into a hotel and it didn't even have the sign Watergate outside. And then all of a sudden they're like, here's Nixon resigning. Like, what would you do with that? You'd be like, I have no idea. Like, you're resigning because some rando guy broke into some rando place. Like, were you friends? Like, did he do it for you? Like, it's very strange how this movie wants you to love Trudeau and respect him without helping you understand why you should. And then it just ends.
That's why it feels like Trudeau fan service.
Yeah.
And then it's over.
Yeah,
it's like,
I already love him. I already respect him. So here's the greatest hits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting fact, the man who wrote this movie is Wayne Grigsby. And he is a writer and producer that also worked on Black Harbor. So maybe we'll see some more things from him if we ever get to watch Black Harbor.
Great White Whale.
I mean, we know where it is. We know it's in the archives in Ottawa. And like, did I spend some time today trying to figure out the cheapest, closest airport to Ottawa from, I don't know, Michigan or Houston or
wherever.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, we could drive there from Vermont. It would be 5 hours. I don't know. We could go apple picking. I'm just throwing things out there.
There's options.
We could have a full adventure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know why that's such a white whale property that just nobody has it. Nobody wants to let us have it for any amount of money because we're willing.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening, we're willing to pay American and Canadian cash dollars. I'm going to throw that out there. I am
real monies.
Real money. Yeah. Not that it wouldn't be fun to go to Ottawa and like see all the Parliament buildings and like do a history tour and be like, Ger made out with somebody right there. We saw it on TV. Like that would be fun. But you know, I also don't want to sit inside the National Archives for however long it would take me to watch an entire series of soap opera material because I might blow my brains out. I'm just as much fun as watching like Ger's Sexy Times would be. I don't know if I can down a whole series of like 4 seasons of soap opera inside a government building for 12 hours.
Like it'd be highlights. It would have to be highlights.
It might kill us. Oh, no. I am in this to win this. I will finish that whole goddamn series. It might kill me, and I am okay with that. But I made a pledge. I made a sacred vow. I'm going to get through all this content if it actually is what ends me. And if it is, then please take a copy of the VHS and throw it in my grave with me.
Okay, I will.
Bury me with it. Bury me with Black Harbor so I can have sexy, sweet dreams. I don't think we mentioned this earlier because we went straight into the confusing history of all of Canada. But this will be our last episode before our hiatus because it turns out that we're hobos and all of us move a lot. Yeah. So we will be each of us on a grand adventure in the next little while. It may only be for a month or so. It may be for a little longer. So I don't know, catch up on Ger content, see if you think that we did a good job of describing things. If you're mad about it, tell us and we'll have something to read in our break. If we pissed you off, let us know at Ger Can Get It at gmail.com.
Also, if you like us.
No, I mean, I assume that, yeah, well, I'm talking to the majority audience. I mean, if there's anyone who likes us, that would be neat. You could tell us. But for everyone who's mad about it, again, Ger Can Get It at gmail.com. Give us a little love note. Tell us all the things we got wrong. What?
A little shout out.
A little shout out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blood spattered angry notes, you know. So
I guess.
Yeah. So I don't know how long the hiatus will be, but we'll keep a look on the Instagram page. I'll try and keep everybody updated. I'm also on Blue Sky, as is Rachel. You're what? Rachel dot Strange and Beautiful?
I don't know. Matt set it up. .network.
Yeah.
It's somewhere. It's S&B network.
Yeah. Well, I know that yours is different from all the other ones because it's like you've got Strange and Beautiful in there. Mine, I think, is Shulky at Law dot Blue Sky. I don't know. It's got the regular tag. I'm the only Shulky at Law anywhere on the internet. You'll find me. You'll see me. I'll post some updates and stuff on there too if you don't want to be on the devil's Instagram anymore, which I understand. I'm on there because it's the only place I can make funny clips of Ger. But we'll look to the skies and we will let you know when we're coming back. We will send smoke signals.
Subscribe. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, there you go.
When we come up. Yeah.
So on that note, friends.
Bye.
Bye.